beginning stages of the Kalen DeBoer era. First two games go as about as well as could be, at least the fourth quarter for the last game. Auburn, still at home. You got New Mexico. I guess kind of a get-right situation after the loss from Cal. So when you look at this week 3 slate, I mean, we've got LSU, South Carolina. We've got Georgia, Kentucky. I mean, there's some intriguing matchups as we look into the SEC moving forward, but it does start there in Madison, Wisconsin, with Alabama hitting the road trip right after big noon kickoff at 11 o'clock on Saturday, Conrad. And after 2 weeks of the season, how are you feeling going into this matchup with Wisconsin for the Alabama Crimson Tide?
Yeah, well, to be completely honest, I expected maybe what we saw last week to be what we would get going into this Wisconsin game. Or by that, I mean, I thought that the game at Wisconsin, maybe we would look at that as, okay, Alabama struggled a little bit on the road in a tough environment, against the, first Power 4 team that they're going to play on the season. And so the fact that we had that against USF, I kind of said this on Monday. I still think that this is a better matchup for Alabama than USF was, just because, I mean, we saw this team last year, and they pretty much did the same thing they did last year, and they hadn't been able to fix it. But a Wisconsin team that they're going to want to run the ball, but, their quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, if you remember him from his Miami days, not the most mobile guy in the world, so that's not really going to be as much of a threat. So I think that, the secondary's played well the first couple of weeks. The defense has looked good outside of, the quarterback scrambles essentially that we saw last week from Byron Brown. So I think that, I feel pretty good about it. I mean, I think I'm a little worried about the offensive line, like every Alabama fan. You want to, get those guys healthy. And I'm not expecting to see Proctor this weekend. I'm still looking at the Georgia game as that's when they're going to try to bring him back, but would definitely be nice to see Pritchett out there on Saturday. So I'm expecting to test maybe a slow start on the road, but I think it's for all the people that watch the USF game and are now thinking, oh, Alabama might lose to Wisconsin, or ooh, Alabama might only win by, a field goal or a touch. And they may, but I think this is going to be I don't want to say a bounce back game for Alabama, but I think they're going to look better on Saturday than they did against USF for sure.
Yeah, and if you've watched Wisconsin the first couple of games, I mean, they had a little bit of a struggle with what was that, Western Michigan, to start things off, and
yeah, their offense hasn't looked great to start the season against I mean, they've played I would say worse teams than Alabama has in the first 2 weeks, and their offense has not inspired a lot of confidence.
Right, they haven't felt like they've dominated in those matchups, and I think of course the namesake, because it's Wisconsin, it's a Big Ten. And we've seen, just this past weekend what an SEC team has done when they go into Big Ten territory, with Texas knocking off Michigan. But I guess as we're starting to figure out how this Kalen DeBoer offense is going to look, and this Kane Womack defense for Alabama. And after 2 games and what we kind of seen from both sides of the ball, and we're looking at this Wisconsin matchup, it feels like Wisconsin has the pressure to not only defend home field, but it almost feels like they have to play above their level, because USF, they were able to kind of out scheme Alabama in certain situations. But I don't think Wisconsin has the talent enough to line up and do that every single play. Like, it's the identity of what Wisconsin has always been. I don't know if that is the best recipe in order to find success against Alabama on Saturday, because I think that defensively, for the teams that have been able to score on you, I don't think they've had the sudden explosiveness that Alabama presents with all the key pieces that they have offensively. And I just think that if Alabama turns this into a track meet, Wisconsin's probably, they're up the hill.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think ultimately it's I think it's probably going to come down to, how does Alabama's offensive line hold up against the defensive front for Wisconsin? Because if we're looking at a situation like, last week, or you go back to certain games last year where, I don't think it's going to be like the Michigan game where it was really just like, I mean, there was nothing you could do because, the defensive front was so good and they were getting pressure. It felt like every single play. I don't think it's going to be like that, but if you're able to cause some problems, and limit the amount of drives that Alabama has, because we know they're going to want to run the ball, they're going to want to shorten the game, and that's just kind of the way that they like to do things at Wisconsin. Even with Luke Fickell there, I would imagine they're going to limit how many times they let Jalen Milroe and Alabama have the football. So if you do get in those situations where you're having a bunch of 3-and-outs and you're not really capitalizing, it could end up being a low-scoring game and a game that is interesting going into the third and fourth quarters. But if Alabama's offensive line is better, I think it's going to look a lot more like the last 6 minutes against USF, where it's, 4 or 5 play drives that are resulting in touchdowns, and maybe not every single time down the field, but if that offensive line can hold up, I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And they start things off at 11 o'clock there from Fox, and right after big noon kickoff. Also at 11 o'clock, LSU taking the trip to Columbia, South Carolina. Boston College takes on Missouri. That's a very
sneaky good game.
Right. After what we've seen Boston College do to start their season off against Florida State, and it's like, okay, well, this team could make it a little bit interesting. And who knows, maybe Missouri, this will be the test to see if truly Missouri's defense has turned the corner. Just of all the things that they had last season. Of course, you lose Coach Baker as well on the defense coordinator. And granted, the first couple teams that you've played haven't really been just the strongest of foot when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. But we've seen Boston College and what they were able to do to line up physically and pretty much walk down Florida State. So maybe Missouri might want to have your chin strap buckled at 11:45 in the morning on Saturday to make sure that you still hold that number 6 ranking in the country for now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good about Missouri, but I think there'll be a number of people that pick Boston College in the upset here. I think that might be a little bit of a trendy pick just because, like you said, I think we have faith that Missouri, once they take the step up in competition, that they're gonna look pretty good. But to be fair, to this point, I don't think they've blown anybody away. They haven't really played anybody, and they're they look good, they look fine. But again, I just feel like they're in a similar boat to. I was higher on Ole Miss coming into the season, but here we are through 2 weeks, and I feel like both Ole Miss and Missouri, you can't really take away a whole lot from who they played. It's just, okay, this is what you should have done. So now let's see how you look against a real team. But I don't know, man. Castellanos and that Boston College defense, and a rejuvenated Bill O'Brien.
He won't be scared. They ain't gonna be scared. I tell you that.
No,
the moment won't be too big for him. But I think it's a couple Jimmys and Joes here and there that could probably separate. Like how many guys defensively you think they could really have? They could stop Luther Burden 1-on-1 every single play. So
yeah, no, I mean
you're limited.
Yeah, to be fair, a lot of teams are limited going up against guys like that. But yeah.
As we look at the afternoon window for Saturday in the SEC, Tulane taking on Oklahoma there in Norman. And Texas A&M hits the road to take on the Florida Gators there at 2:30. And Texas A&M opens up as a 4-point favorite on the road as well.
That game could be really not fun to watch. It could be really fun to watch, but there's something inside me that feels like I feel like that game could be not particularly entertaining. That one could be ugly.
On both sides. Like it's
oh yeah, on both sides.
Graham Mertz starts, right?
I mean, both guys are playing according to Napier, so I don't know what that rotation looks like.
And do you get good Connor Wigman or bad Connor Wigman on the road in the swamp? That's the question.
I was about to say that's the big part of why I said what I said, where this game could be really not fun to watch, because if you get let's just say hypothetically you get week 1 DJ Lagway in there and how he looked when he came in for Graham Mertz in that first week versus Connor Wegman and how he looked against Notre Dame. That's not going to be a fun football game for anybody to watch. But somebody's got to win, right? Somebody's got to be better. Somebody's got to, show something.
It's an interesting game. But not in the not in like the anticipatory way of, ooh, I really want to see what's going on. I could see this game just getting kind of ugly for one side or the other. And I don't know which team that could possibly be because I've seen what Florida could do. Last week against Sanford, of course, the quality of competition you got to take into an account. But I think what I saw against Miami, it's okay. Well, if Texas A&M kind of clicks with what they need to, it could get that ugly. But also, if Texas A&M looks the way that they did against Notre Dame, it's like, okay, big dog, where do you go from here on both sides?
Well, and that's, I think it's an intriguing game, but not in the traditional sense, right? Because, both teams played, we would have said good opponents in week 1 and didn't look particularly impressive. And then they blow out their opponents in week 2. But now, especially for Texas A&M, after Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, it's like, oh, man, so you looked that bad against a team that followed that up with a loss to NIU. Now you're going to play Florida on the road. I feel like this game will kind of tell us who's maybe potentially really bad and who's just going to be okay this year.
Yeah.
Because, if Texas A&M wins this game, you could say, all right, first game of the season, tough opponent at home, the offense, and it wasn't clicking. First game under Mike Elko, but now we're starting to figure things out, move forward, and maybe you start to win some of that optimism back. And for Florida, I mean, this is one of the more favorable games you have remaining. And so it's, just one of those games where if you win, great. If you lose, it's
about it.
There are going to be people that predict you only win 1 or 2 games this year. So, yeah, kind of need this one if you're Florida, if you're hoping to have any hope of getting back into potentially, bowl contention.
Oh, bowl contention.
I mean, I don't think that's happened. I'm just
right. Who do you think ends with more wins this year, Vanderbilt or Florida? Who would have thought we'd been having this conversation at the beginning of the season?
Honestly, I might have to go with Vanderbilt.
They're riding hot, man. They are riding hot.
Well, I mean, who they're playing this? I mean, they're going to be 3-0. They should be 3-0. So you're basically asking me to pick, is Vanderbilt going to win 1 of their last 9 games, or is Florida going to win 4 of their last 10 games?
I would lean my money up at Nashville. Who would have thought we've been having this conversation after 2 weeks into the football season of who could have more wins on their schedule, Florida or Vanderbilt? Whew.
It's just that kind of. I mean, they could be the 2 bottom dwellers in the I mean,
I don't know, man.
Can you imagine? Oh, well, I'm saying Vanderbilt might be ahead of Florida, but I mean, I'm just saying. If you're Florida and you lose this game, like it's not looking great in conference play the rest of the way. So
Vanderbilt's working their way up to the middle of the pack. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that.
They are working their way up.
Exactly. Like they're working their way up to be an almost scary. I ain't gonna say scary team, but a team you better have your A game because I mean Diego Pavia is giving them a different type of juice, and Clark Lee said at SEC Media Days a couple years ago, he's building this thing to be the best program in the conference. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Got to start somewhere, and maybe they continue their winning ways as they take on Georgia State on the road. They got to hit the road. There at 6:00 from Atlanta. UTSA taking on Texas. That game on ESPN at 6 p.m. Ole Miss hits the road for the first time, taking on Wake Forest. UAB travels to Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks after that tough loss against Oklahoma State. New Mexico hits the road to take on the Auburn Tigers at 6:30 on ESPN2. Georgia at Kentucky. That game on ABC. GMAC will be on the call for that one.
Maybe this is the year that game actually, stays interesting. I'm just kidding. That's not going to happen.
I have no faith. I think that
after what we saw last weekend.
Yeah, if South Carolina can physically beat up on Kentucky, I can only imagine what the Georgia Bulldogs would look when they saw that film. It's like, oh boy, here we go. But Mark Stoops. We'll continue that conversation on another day. Toledo takes on Mississippi State. That game on ESPNU at 6:30, and the one Cole will be on the call. SEC Network 6:45. The Tennessee Volunteers take on Kent State. So That gives you the rundown for the SEC. What do you want to see from these teams? What do you want to see from your team as Saturday approaches? 205-834-9450. We'll take your text messages, your calls as we transition and look into week 3 in the SEC. This could be a telltale week for a lot of teams. So we'll continue the conversation on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. .620 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order on this What You Want to See Wednesday. 205-834-9450. What do you want to see from your teams on Saturday? Pretty much you get this. What is the game plan that you want to see your team go out there and execute on Saturday as the teams? Alabama taking on Wisconsin, that trip up to Madison. and Auburn welcomes in New Mexico. Not New Mexico State, y'all. No, these are the Lobos, New Mexico. They're coming in. Bronco Mendenhall. You know, it's long time BYU coach, and then if you look at what his defense has done to start the season off, they're averaging almost about 600.
I was about to say
yards.
they give him about 600 a game, and the McMillan, the receiver for Arizona, that's who they were playing when he had his 300-yard game a couple weeks ago. So
So you're telling me if there was a get right game for Peyton Thorne,
I was gonna say
now's that get right.
Yes, but we also have to be careful and not, if it goes really well this week, that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. That's a good thing.
Right. You don't want to
But we need to pump the brakes and not, okay, it's fixed.
Think about the quality of competition.
Yeah.
We've seen this game. We're familiar with your game now.
Yeah. I mean, I will give New Mexico credit. They have a nice quarterback in Dampier. He's pretty good compared to what New Mexico, because, I mean, let's be honest, New Mexico's one of the worst teams in FBS. Yeah. They have been for a few years. So, this is not a game you should lose, but they have some dudes. I mean, they can cause some problems for you. I mean, heck, when they played Arizona, I mean, it was a 3-point game at halftime. Like, they made it interesting for 30 minutes at least. So, just saying for Auburn fans, I mean, it might be interesting for a little bit. Hopefully it's not. I know that's the last thing Auburn fans want to see, but
yeah.
But yes, to your point, if there was a game or an opponent, this is one of the better ones you would want to play right now if you're Auburn. So, maybe a big day from Peyton Thorne / Hank Brown and the receivers. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think they're leaning towards that Cam Coleman's more than likely not going to play.
Yeah, he's doubtful.
Yeah.
Now, and you shouldn't need him in this game. So
exactly.
As much fun as it might be to watch him go crazy on the secondary for New Mexico, just kind of get him healthy for that Arkansas game maybe. So maybe a big Lambert Smith day. Perry Thompson maybe getting a little, because I that was another thing. I saw people, kind of confused why Perry Thompson wasn't really in the mix last Saturday. So maybe you'll get to see him a little more this week.
Maybe so, but we shall see. 205-834-9450. Mike Lou from Birmingham says, I want to see Peyton Thorne read the defense better. Fair?
Yeah. That would be a good start.
It would. Steven texts in, he says, I would like to see LSU's defense actually show up and play good ball. You got South Carolina early on, and I think let's try not to get fool's gold from what we saw with South Carolina over Kentucky. Now, I do think that LSU can't go in there and thinking they could play their B+, B- game and think they're going to win the ball game, because I think Shane Beamer, he's going to have his team juiced up. No matter who they're.
Momentum.
Exactly. And I think, the health of the Lenore Sellers, he ended up coming back in and having a good game. And I think their identity is a lot different from what it was last season, because you were banking on Spencer Rattler to be able to bail you out of a lot of things. Your offensive line still was bad, so it kind of glossed over everything. But I think for what Lenore Sellers does, he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. He seems very calculated, and he doesn't mind using his legs. He's got a little bit more juice than you'd think. I think having Rocket Sanders, a guy that has toted this thing in the SEC for a while, it benefits them. Now, I think that every game can't necessarily be a fist fight, but if LSU doesn't, come out and execute on all cylinders, South Carolina can make this game interesting, if not just win it straight up.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of got it straightened out a little bit against Nichols last weekend, but I mean, that was a 23-21 football game in the third quarter last week between LSU and Nichols, and that doesn't give you maybe the most confidence going into South Carolina, because I agree with you. I mean, LSU is the better team. They shouldn't have that much difficulty with this, but if they go in there and they're not bringing their A game, as we've seen, that defense still liable to give up points, it could get interesting. And I still, I'm very confident that LSU can win this football game, but they could, have to sweat it out for a little bit longer than, maybe some people think they will. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we get from South Carolina, just because, For them to have the performance they did against Old Dominion in week 1 and then turn around and do that to Kentucky last week, I was impressed, but again, I don't know if it's more of that was very impressive by South Carolina, or maybe Kentucky's just not very good this year. At least offensively speaking, doesn't look great right now. So I think this could be kind of an intriguing game. This could be one of those, because we've had, you go back a couple years to the South Carolina Georgia game that was a little hairy, and we've seen South Carolina. I know, they beat Tennessee and Clemson obviously a couple years ago, but we've seen them make some of the better teams in the SEC sweat it out here over the last couple of years. So maybe that's what you get on Saturday. But yeah, if you're LSU, this would be a good time for that defense to step up and have a statement.
Absolutely. Alan texted in. He says, I would like to see I would like to see Bama utilize the 5 to 10 yard behind the D line. Slants, crosses, outs. Is DeBoer trying not to show his hand or what, gentlemen?
Oh, see, okay, so he wants quick passes,
right,
because of last week where it felt like they were trying to throw the ball down the field all the time.
I mean, I don't necessarily. I don't know. I guess I have to I truly look at how they design their stuff, but they all build off something. When they run their RPOs, they run their play actions. They take a little bit of time. Maybe. I don't know. I have to look at really how their route concepts develop, because I don't necessarily think they need to attack it because they're having success in other places.
Well, I think I'm assuming what that person, when they're texting, what they're talking about is more so if the offensive line struggles again,
Just get it out quick.
Yes, being able to get the ball out quickly so that you don't force Milroe into these situations like we saw last week and last year, where he holds the ball, tries to make something happen, and then, he's taking a 10-yard loss. So I agree with that. If the offensive line is struggling, yeah, let's try to get the ball out quicker. But, it's also one of those things where we can sit here and say, oh, well, they should have done this or that. But, it can be hard to tell when it's an RPO. Are they making the right read, and, something else went wrong, or what have you. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. And of course, the coach speak answer is, well, you take what the defense gives you. So
exactly.
But yes, I think, maybe a few more quick passes and maybe some jet sweeps, things like that. Get some guys more involved, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. 205-834-9450. You continue with your text message, your calls. We'll get to it on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. Welcome on back into Morning JOX, JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and you as well, 205-834-9450. We asked the question on Wednesdays, what do you want to see? You kind of install your own game plan for what you want to see from your team on Saturday. And of course, we love to get your reaction on the JOX text line and also the phone lines, 205-834-9450. D text in, he says, I would like to see Milroe changing protection schemes at the line and not taking 12-yard sacks when the defense clearly showing overloads. Yeah, I think that's something he needs to pick up. Got to have that awareness.
Yeah, and that's where, I think that's one of the bigger criticisms right now is you got to be able to make out calls at the line, and you got to be able to call out your own protection and be able to read what a defense can do, because that's clearly an area that he still needs to improve on. And, somebody that's looking at going to the NFL after this year, that is definitely something you're going to need to be able to do at the next level. So yeah, I think that's we heard a lot about, working on the intermediate passing game in the offseason and that being a big point of emphasis. And it's, okay, we heard good things about that, but now, yeah, we got to be able to read the defense, and you got to be able to protect yourself, because sometimes it's on the offensive line, but sometimes it's on the quarterback and the offensive line gets blamed.
As you can imagine, on the opposite side of town, that there's one position of concern for a lot of these Auburn fans, and it's the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. Within 2 seconds of each other, somebody texts in and says a different QB1. Thorne ain't it, and then the next one says, I want to see Hank Brown. Hey.
I mean, to be fair, the backup quarterback's always the most popular player on the team when they're not playing well, right? But I just think people are just curious because, right, and look, these are different situations. I'm not saying, trying to compare them, directly to each other, but you look at last year with the USF game for Alabama and when Jalen Milroe got benched and that whole situation. And, I don't know if they would come out, and I don't know if Nick Saban would openly acknowledge this, but I at least have a belief that part of that whole thing last year with benching Milroe for the USF game was, oh, okay, y'all think these other guys are better? Well, let's go play the other guys and let you see how bad they are. And then maybe you're not going to be so upset when Jalen Milroe's out there. And I don't think they would ever acknowledge that that was a factor in the decision. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was just a coincidence that, that's how it looked afterwards when we saw how bad Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson were in that game. If your other quarterbacks really aren't better than Peyton Thorne, throw them out there for a series or two and let people see, oh, okay, we don't have any better options. Because until you see it, people are always going to be able to convince themselves that, oh, well, the other guy's better. Like, right. They just don't want to play him for some reason. But until you actually see him go out there, okay, he's not consistent. He doesn't look good enough. All right, well, let's see it in the game.
I'm telling you, man. Let's go to, speaking of old Auburn, we got Wardam Don Don this morning. Wants to talk some ball. What's going on, Don Don?
Hey, fellas. How y'all doing?
Doing well, brother.
Another great day up at Social Taco yesterday. Good to see everybody. Great to meet Bama Hater. That's the first time I ever met him.
Always nice to have a good crowd and see new people every week. So it's always good up there at Social Taco.
Absolutely, guys. Well, hey, guys, we were talking about this yesterday. Where would we be if we didn't fire Gus, fellas? Gus never had a losing season, and since we fired him, I think.
Okay. See, think about where we are. We are 2 weeks into the season, and we are talking about a coach that wasn't there last year. Wasn't there too? We're talking about a coach that was there's a stopgap in between Gus Malzahn and what you have at Hugh Freeze now. You're asking us what would happen if you had Gus Malzahn as your head coach?
Yes.
2 weeks into the season. 2 weeks into 2024. The same season that you told me Peyton Thorne's going to have 30 touchdowns, you're sitting here asking us on September the 11th of 2024 what would Auburn be if they still had Gus Malzahn as their head coach? Think about that.
Just a talking point, brother. But to answer your question about what I'd like to see Saturday.
There we go.
I'd I'd like to see number 27 carry the ball at least 25 times.
That'd be a good start.
That would be ideal. Absolutely ideal.
And what I'm hearing is this about the quarterbacks. They both are getting first team reps, and they both are going to play. And I'm hearing that Peyton Thorne will start, but you know, I don't know if this is kind of game that you can experiment trying to play two quarterbacks or not. But I think they're both going to play. But they got to. I think they got to go back to the regular offense. Quit trying to do this NFL passing game because obviously it's not working. Peyton Thorne is not the quarterback for that type of offense. I mean, I hate to say it and everything. I don't want to knock the kid, and everybody is knocking the kid. Everything, he's getting crushed on social media. But, hey, it's big boy football, guys. It comes with the territory.
And you over here asking me about Gus Malzahn being the head coach of this Auburn football team.
I told you yesterday I was going to bring this up today, just a talking point. But
I know you gave Damian a whole night to think of how he was going to turn that against you, Don.
Right.
I did. Conrad, you're right.
2 weeks into the season. Like, we hadn't even got to a conference play yet. We're asking about if Gus Malzahn was the head coach.
Okay, but Conrad, what did we come up with yesterday? 18-22 since he's left?
Yeah, it's something along those lines. That may not be, give or take a game or two here or there. But, yeah, it's slightly under 500 overall for Auburn since Gus.
And did the man ever have a losing season?
I mean,
no, he did not.
He did not.
But he's at Central Florida, and I got Hugh Freeze. So Damien, I understand your point. Okay.
I think if Gus Malzahn was there, you might have beaten Alabama one of these last few years because he was good for one of those every 3 or 4 years.
He did it with Bo Nix as the quarterback.
Yeah,
I can only imagine what he could have done
before Bo Nix was good, right?
Exactly. Let's go to Nick and Springville. Let's go to Nick and Springville to talk this morning with us. What's going on, Nick?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, no complaints this way, brother.
Well, I agree with a lot of what Don said. I think right now Hugh Freeze needs to treat this as he's a CEO. He needs to make the decision. I would love to see Hank Brown a lot more. And even just putting him in and handing it off to Hunter, let him get 25, 30 carries a game just to build his confidence up. Jet sweeps, quick passes, screen passes, just anything to build the confidence of the quarterback and the line. Jarquez is going to do what he does. He's going to carry the ball. I think last week with him was a fluke, just happened trying to get more yardage. But I think everybody would calm down on Peyton if they could see Hank a little bit, at least get that option to say, hey, he's not the guy.
Yeah. And as an Auburn fan, Nick, like, do you kind of have the same question that I've kind of had of why don't you try to run the ball a lot more? Like, I just think that it could be your offensive line has shown you that they probably consistently can't, lock it in, but I would make it more of a point to just give Jarquez the ball some way, somehow. That way it takes the load off of your quarterback because say he does bust one or two here and there, with the more carries he gets, I think the better he becomes as a running back. And it says through 2 games to only have 20, I think combined 18 touches. And it's like at some point he's got to get rolling too.
Well, and Jarquez has proven even with a not great offensive line, he can make the plays happen if he's given the chance. So, yeah, I think we definitely need to get it in his hands. I'm a huge fan of Jesse. Put a fast guy in there, hand it the ball, go to the outside, and run it.
Who knows, man? Hey, Nick, we appreciate the call, brother. We'll try to figure this thing out. We got people calling in talking about Gus Malzahn as the head coach, and then we were 2 weeks into the season, y'all. Why are we backtracking already? I don't get it. I just don't get it.
That 2026 recruiting class is still looking good, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like I thought Deuce Knight was going to come in and save the program come 2025.
Oh, well, he's still committed to Notre Dame. So he was. Maybe he shouldn't have gone back to Auburn last weekend.
Well, I tell you, let's go to Uncle Burr this morning. Wants to talk some ball on Morning JOX. What's going on, Burr?
Hey, good morning, guys. Good morning. I always enjoy listening to you. Listen, I got about a minute and 30-second gripe about something from yesterday. If y'all just deal with me, okay? And I wasn't going to bring it up, but y'all brought up the Auburn quarterback thing a minute ago. One of your shows yesterday, I love the show and I love the guys, but one of them has a quarterback bias that drives you so nuts that you just want to throw up sometimes. And the other one has a coach bias where you can't say anything about the coach, and they spent the first 45 minutes defending Thorne and why you should absolutely positively not try to swap him out. And some of the things they brought up just had my eyes rolling, but I couldn't really call in. And the thing was, I don't think everybody thinks that a swap out is permanent. But sometimes you just need someone to spark the team for a minute. And it's not like Thorne just started his first 2 games. This is his history. And it was almost like they were jumping on people for thinking that you could do that. Sometimes the team just needs a spark. It doesn't mean that quarterback's out for good. You know what I'm saying? And then somebody brought up, well, look at what happened with Tua and Jalen Hurts. You know, they won a championship because the coach had enough to just swap them out for a minute. And it was still just a bunch of garbage. And then they started comparing, well, if you're going to swap out a quarterback for messing up, you got to take out that running back because he didn't block, or the receiver because he didn't catch the ball. Well, I've seen wide receivers taken out because they didn't catch the ball, and running backs not run because they're missing blocks. And I'll say this, the thing is this, we can't always – the quarterback sometimes gets too much criticism. But a lot of times they get too much credit because the team can play a perfect game, the entire team, offense, defense, and everything else. But when the game is over, the quarterback's going to get the MVP, right? So don't give me this like the quarterback's just this guy. You don't want to hurt his feelings and take him out every now and then. I think the fans just want to see if it works. And it's like what McCullough said earlier, if it doesn't work, cool. But let's quit acting like the fans are idiots and like we don't know what we're talking about all the time just because we have an opinion about certain stuff. Well, hey, look, Bama swapped out a lineman, and guess what? We scored 3 touchdowns right after that and won a game. Nobody's beating the kid up. But what I'm saying is, goodness gracious, guys. Anyway, I just had to get it off my chest. Thank y'all for getting it off my chest. I was trying to hold it in.
Hey,
All good, Bert.
It's all good, Bert. We appreciate it, man. Hey, I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I think that's what makes everything great. Because if we all thought the same, the world would be boring. So yeah, of course, you know, you may see something one way, they may see something another, but I think it's fair.
Yeah. And it just, again, I will just go back to what I said a few minutes ago. Maybe this is a stupid comment to make because we're not in we're not in practice. We're not in those film rooms. We don't know, we're not ingrained in the program. But, I mean, you hear Hugh Freeze come out and say, okay, well, it's hard for me not to play the guy that plays the best in practice, but that obviously needs to carry over to the games. Okay, well, we have how many examples now of that not happening? And when the best thing you can go and say is, well, he played some good football for us in some big games last year. Okay, yeah, I mean, he got you close against Alabama. He got you close against Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe not the wrong way to look at it, but I kind of look at that as, okay, well, what if you did have a better quarterback? Maybe you win those games. And we're in a completely different situation with Auburn right now. And we don't know what the other guys look like. And so if you want to prove to the fan base that, okay, Peyton Thorne really is the best option, again, throw the other guy out there and let us see, okay, this isn't the answer, because you can't throw Peyton Thorne back out there if he's going to turn the ball over and expect people to just believe, well, this is the best we got. I swear. It's like, how is that the best that you have? And if it really is, then, that's a failure on you and your coaching staff. And at the very least, I think you owe the fan base hey, I dropped the ball on this one, man. I haven't been able to develop a quarterback these last couple of years. And this is just the situation we're in. And if that's the case, that's the case. But, the fan base is just going to continue to run wild with, well, what do the other guys look like? Surely it can't be worse than that. Until you let them see the other guys, you're not probably going to win much favor with the fan base. Absolutely.
205-834-9450. We continue to get your reaction to what do you want to see from your team on Saturday, and just get your reaction to some of these phone calls as well. 205-834-9450. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 6:50 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, hold it down for you for a few more minutes as we get you set for McElroy and Kublik in the morning. We've been getting your reaction to a lot over the past hour or so. 205-834-9450. Chris from Alabaster texts in. He says, Don was worried about Thorin getting blown up by social media. Players wanted to make the big money. They ain't student athletes anymore. It's fair.
It's a good thing we're not in the players or employees phase right now because you could get fired.
Right. Barry texted in. He says, such an overreaction by Don. Do you want to be a perennial 7-6, 8-4 team? Because that's Gus Malzahn.
Well, and that's the reality is, okay, over the last, 4 or 5 years now, would Auburn have won more games with Gus Malzahn? Probably, but I don't think you would be set up as well for the future as you are right now. Because, tongue in cheek, you probably would have got another game against Alabama because he was able to beat Alabama every couple of years. That's how it went. But yeah, you would be the same Auburn team that you were 5 years ago. So you would have a couple more wins, but I don't think recruiting wise and where this program is set up, this program's still set up to be good. You need a quarterback, obviously, and I understand that's frustrating, but again, the job that Hugh Freeze has done recruiting-wise,
right?
He's done a good job.
He's done a great job.
And I understand you can have complaints about the X's and O's, and you shouldn't have lost, last week. You shouldn't have lost to New Mexico State last year. I get it. Those are fair criticisms to have. But overall, I think the program is still headed in the right direction.
Yeah, it's just we didn't see this one coming over the weekend. It's throwing a lot of people off.
No, it's a setback.
It is. Let's go to Hastings on the phone line. Wants to talk some ball. What's going on, Hastings?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Hey, by the way, watch you guys on YouTube this morning. Pretty cool. And Damian, yeah, man, you do not discriminate at all. I see the Roll Tide shirt today, man. I'm right there.
I'm a big Alabama guy. Huge.
Oh, Hastings, I told him to wear that in the third week of October, and we'll see who he's really a fan of.
We'll take what we can get. Every once in a while when it comes to the MLB playoffs, I'll be the biggest whoever's winning fan there is.
Absolutely.
But, hey, yeah, I'll preface this. Hey, I like Don. He's a great guy. But Don, with this whole Gus Malzahn thing, you got to look at it. This is the same guy who was saying that Auburn was going to have a better receiving core this year than Alabama and offensive line.
He said that.
I keep receipts.
It's been a rough week for him, Hastings.
I was going to hold off on that, but I kept receipts on that. And then is gloating about this recruiting class, and if you don't start winning some games, you better be careful because you may be losing some of those recruits. But yeah, this whole Gus Malzahn conversation is out of control. You can point out we wouldn't have a winning season, but Georgia did the same thing with Mark Richt, and there was a little bit of a digression there the first couple of years. Then Kirby Smart came in, and eventually now they're winning championships. Just because you have mediocre, you don't want to settle. Nobody in life wants to settle, and that's what Auburn fans would have done with Gus. And if I remember correctly, they couldn't get him out of town fast enough towards the end of his career. Yeah, he had a winning season, but if you remember, it was ugly, and there was no trajectory because he couldn't win the big games. Now, Sark went about 500 in his first couple of years at Texas, and now people love him. You got to give Hugh Freeze some time to build up these players. People forget how decimated Harsin made that roster, and people are also forgetting the Jim McElwain situation at Florida. Yeah, they won a lot of games, but was that a good program? Did y'all ever have faith that program was going to win anything?
No, they were good enough to get to Atlanta and get blown out in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, and then our short guy, he ended up leaving for Bowling Green or Central Michigan to hang out with Connor Stallions a little bit.
Yeah, that's where he is now.
Look, if I'm, and this is just to Don and some of those overreaction, because this is all just such an overreaction because these games are coming quick, and it's only week 2, but hey, give it a little bit more time. The quarterback situation may work itself out. Sometimes you don't know what you got till it's gone, and things look prettier in the background. But, hey, man, pump the brakes a little bit, see what he can do. He's got good recruiting going on. Let him develop his offense, get some key wins, get to a bowl game this year. You guys are good. So, hey, look, Auburn fans, Don, relax. It's going to be okay. You'll be good. And most of all, hey, great watching you guys today. Appreciate y'all taking my call. We'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks,
Absolutely, guys. Hastings. Man. Son, I could have just took it off to the break. Could have teed it up for McElroy and Kubelik in the morning, man. But that's Hastings, dog. We love it. As always, a lot of fun. Flies by. Mac and Cube in the morning. They're next.